let's go ahead and get started. Thank you to all our panelists that are here. This is a monthly webinar that the Indiana Department of Education puts together as part of their facilities grant from the federal government. With us, we have two representatives from IDOE, Bea Pacheco and Shanice Hawkins. Today's topic is going to be how to evaluate an old building. When we put this together, we quickly realized that it is not just about going into a new facility and evaluating that old facility that could potentially be an expansion or a new school, but evaluating school's current facility and what could be and what improvements they could make to have some efficiencies. We have a great panel today, and I'll turn it over to David Rosenberg. But before we begin, could we please have Bea or Denise say a few words before turning it over?
Hi, everyone. This is Bea. I am a charter school grant specialist at the Indiana Department of Education. I'm very happy to be with you all today, and also want to thank the panelists for joining us. They are definitely experts in their field, and we're really happy to have this partnership with them, along with Bondry, in discussing how to evaluate an old school building. In collaboration with Bondry Management Consultants, we have been providing, as Oscar mentioned, monthly webinars, and look forward to continuing to work with you. So if you have any comments, questions, or feedbacks, we are happy to help.
All right. Well, with that said, there's a lot of information here, a lot of useful information, and there are plenty of schools that are in subpar facilities currently, and a lot of schools that are looking to expand their operations as their population continues to grow. But with that said, I'm going to turn over to David Rosenberg with Innovation Education Solutions, and he'll take it from here.
Thanks, Oscar. Thanks to the IDOE and Bondry for having us today. I am David Rosenberg, co-founder of the Center for Innovative Education Solutions. We call ourselves CIS, or CIS for short. We're a nonprofit that was born out of the Mind Trust that provides back office, low-cost support services for schools. These include financial CFO work, state reporting, grant and title writing, special education consulting, transportation, and most recently, facility financing and management. We've helped schools facilitate financing about over $50 million in the last 18 months or so, which has saved these schools nearly $1 million annually that they're not paying in leases or debt service payments. And this is funding that can be directly put back into the classroom, into the students, and not sent out of state to a bank or a financier or anything like that. I also spent time with IPS in the city of Indianapolis, and are well ingrained with the state community in terms of working with schools, K-12 schools throughout Indiana. So I'll turn over to Adam Collins, a partner at Wallach, Summers & Haas.
Of course. Thanks, David. My name is Adam Collins. As he said, I'm a partner with Wallach, Summers & Haas. We're a law firm here in Indianapolis that's focused on commercial real estate transactions, but also with a niche specialty in public-private agreements. And we tend to do a lot of representation of governmental units, institutions, and nonprofits as it relates to their commercial real estate transactions. So with David, I've had the opportunity to work with several schools on their charter school financing and hopefully bring, what we think is some private sector experience and strategy to the nonprofit institutional part of this. So for what it's worth, I'm also the chair of a board of a charter school, Victory College Prep. So, I like to think we use that experience where it's relevant to kind of guide the decision making and know and understand the particular pressures that you feel. So happy to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Great, thanks, Adam. Let's turn it over to Mark Harebrant.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us, and we're excited to be part of this panel. My name is Mark Harebrant. I'm a senior account executive with Ameresco. I've been in the energy efficiency and construction industry for about 30 years. I've been with Ameresco since they acquired us back in 2004, along with Scott, who will be coming up as part of our engineering team. I'm also an elected official. I was elected into office as a Hamilton County commissioner in 2013. So we manage 22 buildings, operate Riverview Health, which is a county-owned hospital. And I'm excited to be here today to share with you some of our experience and how we can provide some information to be helpful to the charter schools.
Scott?
And I am Scott Fowler. I'm Director of Operations with Ameresco. As Mark mentioned, I've been with Ameresco since 2004, and then previously about 5 years prior, before Ameresco bought us. I've got about 40 years of industry experience, specializing in the K-12 market. So we do a ton of design build work for your market share specifically. We know schools, we renovate them all the time. And hopefully we can help you make some informed decisions with our offerings.
Great. Well, we got a lot to get through today. I know the title of this is, evaluating an old building. That can also include your current school. Doesn't necessarily have to be old, but I think having Mark and Scott and their expertise here on what we can do to facilitate and help your existing building, remodel or improve energy efficiencies. They're going to have a lot to add. So really excited for them to join as well. C started our facility financing and management work because we work closely with schools every day until the strain that facilities can have on the school itself and the school leader. You are great educators and don't want or need to be the real estate experts. You just want to find a long-term home for your school that fits your educational, but also your financial need. But during that same thing, you're trying to do more with less every single day. You have fewer staff, dedicated to operations, no dedicated funding from the state for charter schools to have facilities. And so all of these have caused charter schools to enter into facility deals that put them in a building that either doesn't fit their model or into a financial deal that isn't sustainable long term. And in fact, according to the Center for Education Reform, one of the top 5 reasons that any charter schools close are because of facilities, either the bad deals or the inappropriate settings. So how do you find and build your home for the future? We say it's easy as ABC, and at the first webinar we did, this was not intentional. It kind of came together as ABC, but it works. So the most important thing, and the folks we have here today are the experts. You have to assemble the right team. We've spent many years developing relationships and partnerships that benefit the schools, and finding the experts in each area and working with them to keep costs low and below market rate is because of the experience that we've continued to work on. Also, depending on the deal, you're going to have a wide range of experts that you need to bring to the table. We can help you identify those folks, whether it's a financial advisor, real estate attorney like Adam, bond attorney, project manager like Cease does, owner's rep, design professional, the firms like Ameresco. So there's a whole swath of folks and experts that you need to bring to the table. And you need to make sure you're getting the right deal with those folks. Then we need to build the right deal for the school's needs. There are many different ways to work through that financial analysis, which Oscar and the Bondry team do a great job with in helping schools do that. And so making sure it's the right financial deal, both in the short term, but also in the long term. Then we need to close that deal, work with the right partners, the market, investors, CDFIs, and other players to deliver the deal that we've set up. And again, that comes from the experience and the relationships we've been able to build as the team here. And then, working with design construction firms, Ameresco, others out there that can help really bring the right talent and expertise to the table so that you're not getting into a building that doesn't fit your setting or doesn't last the term that you need it to. And then, execute on the plan and get it open in time for your school building. Now, the previous presentation we did in connection with IDOE and Bondry was how to build a new charter school on August 12th, fully recognizing that a new facility may not be right for every school. Schools still in your first charter or, other metrics that don't add up, may be hard to get financing for a new school. Potentially finding the right building, renovating your current school, or adding, energy efficiency or other additions to the school may be the right fit for you and can still set you up for long-term success. And so for when looking at that old building, this presentation will highlight what you need to focus on, potential benefits, pitfalls, and again, how we can help you build the right team, assemble the right team to get the experts on to help you navigate the process. So we've kind of put in the 3 phases, and again, Mark and Scott are going to weigh in heavily to these, but let me turn it over to Adam as we kind of walk through these first few phases here. Then we'll turn it over to Mark and Scott's team to dig through some of their slides.
Yeah, thanks, David. So David made an important point there, and I think it's worth covering for those who didn't see the initial presentation that we did about new construction. We're in a very dynamic marketplace right now as it relates to construction costs and lead time. So I can tell you I've got another project I'm working on, not a school project, but it's a rehab of an existing building, and they're looking at materials, roofing materials that won't be available until June of 2022 if they order them today. So the point in saying all this is you have to be able to evaluate the market you're in and know what the potential issues that could come up and affect, most critically your cost and your schedule. Schedule is incredibly important for you all as charter school. School starts on August, whatever that date is, and you can't move it back a week because the project's delayed. And so those are the things that you've got to be very focused on from the front end. So given the market that we're in right now, I think, just personally looking at potential projects where you're perhaps renovating might help you a little bit there. It might be a little bit easier cost control. You can take stuff on piece by piece. I'm sure these are things that, Mark and Scott will talk a little bit more, but I just want to kind of set the table there. From a team perspective, there are several places that we think it's important to have smart people who are in the market who know what they're doing. And the earlier you get them involved, we think it's the better. That's usually, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So from a financial perspective, having a financial advisor who can not only go and take your budget numbers, but can interpret them for the particular financing method you're looking at using, whether that's a capital markets solution and bond investors, or whether that's a bank. You need somebody who can speak that language and give some credibility to your numbers. And so having somebody involved there that'll really permit you to kind of back into a budget is incredibly helpful. Project management, as David said, the number one thing that kills these projects is delay decision making in time. And so a lot of the problem you'll see on a project if folks are locked up in other emergent issues. I know school leaders have had their hands full with COVID and the academic challenges, this past year, let alone having to make the decision on, when a meeting needs to occur relative to a financing conversation. So we think it's important to have that project management piece so that you can make sure this is moving along quickly, because again, usually we're on a pretty tight time frame as it relates to schedule and completion so that we can build in enough time to get you in before your school year starts. In terms of an owner's rep, that's another piece. Usually having somebody on your end who can check the contractor depending upon the delivery method and make sure that they're not cutting corners and ultimately getting what you want. And that can be somebody who's got construction background, and that's typically what we see. Having the right design professional is important too. You want somebody who not only understands schools, but somebody who understands you're working on a budget, right? And so, this is not Eli Lilly spending any amount of money they want. You're going to have a particular and defined budget, and you got to get as much scope into that as possible. So having somebody who understands that on the front end is really going to be critical for that. The next kind of part of the fact finding phase is just determining needs. So you need somebody to help you go through and determine where are we at programming, number of classrooms, how many students, what amenities, what pieces are critical to our operation as a school that we have to make sure is included. And so, oftentimes these are, needs versus wants. And so getting realistic in terms of what you need and what that translates into a total budget amount will be critical as you go forward. And then as we look at the budget, depending on how you finance, there are a lot of different ways that this can be done, but they all carry different requirements. So whether that's loan to value, meaning how much you can borrow versus the value of the asset, debt service coverage, which means what your annual revenue is as compared to your outstanding debts, reserve funds where you have to put some money away in advance so you can cover debt service payments in the event of default. All those different things are financial elements that are going to affect the amount of money that you can borrow in your bottom line. So it's important to work with your team and especially your financial advisor to determine what's the best option from a cost of capital perspective, but also what matches your cash flow, what matches the funds you have available, what matches your resources, so you can really identify a budgetary solution that's going to work for you. David, if we can advance it. As we look at this kind of exploratory phase, these are the questions that we think you and your team should go through as you're considering what your options are. When we look at ownership options, as we talk about a renovation, the critical here is lease or buy. From a practical perspective, it really doesn't matter. I think charter schools should be looking at this as how much money are we going to pay, monthly or annually in debt service, and so that's going to be the critical factor. The question as to whether to lease or to buy really is probably going to be a function of what your financial structure is. Given that you're going to be a single tenant of the building, you're most likely going to be responsible for maintenance and operational costs regardless of whether you're a tenant or an owner. So again, there's not going to be any real impact there. What we would highly caution you though, as you're looking at these options, we've seen folks that have, leased properties to charter schools at with tremendous additional fees added on. In some cases, if you look at it, the schools were paying 25-30% interest, really, as opposed to if they had just purchased the building. So you need to understand what the kind of all-in number is and how that impacts you and how that would relate to, debt service on a loan or something like that. As it relates to real estate, typically you're going to have an idea of location of where you want to be. So your team can help you engage a broker if necessary or other professionals to identify the sites. Once you start to look at those sites, there are a handful of things that your team should help you think about. Access, environmental condition, age of the building, things that it might relate to. In a lot of these old buildings, we see asbestos, they have boilers, all of these things that, may have costs, and someone will be able to tell you really quickly, like, hey, we're looking at a boiler, we don't have air conditioning in this. If you want to add these, the cost is going to be, X. And so having that expertise to go in and really just knock out immediately the buildings that aren't going to work for you, or, if there's a series of walls, they're load bearing, it's not going to allow you to move the classrooms around the way that really works for you. You want to know those things as quickly as possible. So your team's going to help you, put in an offer, buy that. That's all pretty simple. But from a technical side, you really need somebody to help you evaluate the building on the front end and make sure it's going to meet your needs. As it relates to construction, there are a couple different delivery methods. Really the spectrum, and I won't get into all the details, swings from how much control and responsibility you as a charter school want to take versus how much you push off onto the private sector and the developer. And, several of us on this panel have experience in government, but I won't speak for anyone else, but what I've always said is during my time in government, I, recognize that I had a number of other critical focuses and they did not include, the construction of a project. And so it's important to, push as much risk we think onto the private sector as possible. So you as a charter school leader don't necessarily want to have to address disputes between your architect and your contractor. We like this, and apologize for the saying in advance, but one throat to choke, right? Or I think one of our other folks had said one person to hug, however you want to look at it. But one person that you can go to, address your issues, and make them responsible for what's going on, as opposed to have to determine, what the individual problems are yourselves. In terms of financing options, there are several available. Capital market, bond funding, you can get 30-year fixed rate financing that's available. Typically, you have less refinancing options, but that's an extremely stable option if you're there. That's going to require a little bit higher issuance costs. It's also going to require you to be stabilized as a school, meaning you have your second charter typically, or some sort of guarantee from either a municipal entity, a local foundation, whatever that might be. But that's probably the most cost-effective method typically, especially once you get over, say, 5 to 10 million in costs. Bank financing is also an option, but typically you're going to have a little more equity in terms of your asset, and you're going to have pretty significant cash flow coverage. So it's just something to be aware of. Know it's an option. We go from there. CDFIs, community development financial institutions, I think is the technical term, but they will often take federal funds, leverage those so that they can provide lower interest loans to schools. Again, can be an attractive option, can be a way to layer in maybe some subordinate debt or another part of the cost of the project. But one thing you have to watch with those is the fees, and make sure again that the fees, you're calculating those in your total cost of capital. It's not just the interest rate, it's what you're paying for it all. The last aspect and where we've seen people look at is philanthropic, and that can be from national foundations, or that can be from individual capital campaigns on your site. So that can be an option that's layered in and potentially help you obtain more attractive financing terms. But those are the options as we see them with charter schools today. As we look at process, in terms of closing, I'll be pretty quick here. Financially, you just have to understand there's going to be, a metric ton of paper that people are going to want you to sign and review, and probably, a number of conversations that you may have to have either with groups of investors, banks, or a ratings agency to get the financial kind of number that you want. So typically, really what people are trying to understand is what kind of a credit risk you are. So the conversations are going to be based on what your operations are, how your recruitment's been, how your budget's approved, all those different things, so they can really understand you as an organization. From a real estate perspective, we make sure that we have the financing closed, or the financing lined up and ready to close before we close on the real estate. So we knit these things all together at once. Any lawyer, of any competency on the real estate side that you would hire should be able to handle this without much additional, effort or cost to you. So that's a pretty simple part of the process. You need to know it happens all at the same time. And then once you get done from that, or once you're done with that, once we close on the real estate, we have the financing, that's when we turn the money over. Your bank account's full, and we're now paying the contractor to start on the actual design, if needed, or design and/or construction of the process. So I think that's it for the transaction phase, and now you get the experts to tell you how it really happens, what you need to look for on the important part there.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, let's turn over to Mark and Scott, and you guys can dig in. I think you're on mute, Mark.
If you could, David, go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I thought as we were preparing this presentation, we talked a little bit about making sure that everybody knew who Ameresco was. There's some that may not know, have never heard of us, but we're a leading energy services developer, construction-driven company with a strong resume in renewable energy industry. We were excited in April this year. We were recognized by Guidehouse Insights, who is an independent research data and benchmarking firm, as the #1 in the field of what's called energy as a service, that Scott and Garen will talk about maybe later on in the presentation. Last year as a company, we constructed over $7 billion in solution-based projects in the country. We have over 1,000 employees in 70 regional offices throughout North America. As a company, we're dedicated to identifying cost-effective solutions for our customers. Next slide, please. Again, as we were preparing this presentation, one of the things that we thought that we'd share with you is some of the things that I personally hear, being in the marketing piece and going around and traveling the state of Indiana. Some of the things that we hear from some of the districts, such as yourself, on what some of the issues are. Obviously, one of the big ones is comfort issues. This could be older, outdated HVAC systems where they're just not getting good airflow, temperatures in the rooms. You could also have some indoor air quality issues. There could be some mold that needs to be remediated. especially with COVID this last year. One of the things that we hear is looking at things like ionization to help to clean the air and have better air quality in the school. We hear a lot about, hey, our cost of fixing our maintenance is excessive. We're repairing, just band-aiding a lot of things, and we're really not looking at it from a long-term standpoint. And our maintenance costs are going through the roof, and it's really affecting our budgets. Leaking doors, windows that are causing drafts in the building, another common thing that we hear. Inadequate electrical distribution. This could be some of your electrical systems that you have in there. I'll move to safety concerns, because this could be a safety concern that is addressed to us by the staff. We see this a lot. There's inadequate access to technology, especially you need updates in technology, whether it's internet access and things like that. Teaching in the classroom, that's important. Security in the school system is vitally important. A number of the projects that we've done has addressed some of the security issues, surveillance systems to help to provide better safety in the school systems. You may have an outdated fire alarm system, lack of fire suppression systems, water quality concerns. There could be ADA issues. We address these all the time in some of the older type schools that have not addressed this situation. Building aesthetics and attracting good kids to your schools is very important. And as we've learned with this COVID pandemic environment, space utilization is important. So in a lot of these schools here recently, we've really had to address space utilization and how the teaching environment is affected by this. Rising costs of utilities, that's a continued thing that is going to be something that you're going to have to address. We will address and look at that. That's one of the things that we provide a tremendous amount of expertise with. We look at this, we do utility analysis, and we look how to help to save the school district substantial amounts of money in the utility sector. And we also look at renewable energy opportunities. Solar's been extremely popular. Hamilton Southeastern Schools, we just installed a 3 megawatt solar system. They were really interested in utilizing solar there at their facility, not only to reduce their energy costs, but also use it as an education piece in the school with kiosk and they had certain curriculums that they had for renewable energy that they could help to teach some of the students about renewable energy and the importance of it. So next slide, and I'll hand it over to Scott. Scott, I think you're muted.
There we go. How about now? Okay.
Scott, you somehow muted yourself again.
How about now?
Gotcha.
There we go. Okay. As Mark mentioned, Ameresco offers a variety of services to building owners such as you. Besides the design, build, construction side and the energy saving side, we also go in and we assess buildings for the condition. As many of you are out searching for buildings, we can come in and give you a good, solid foundation of what needs to be done within the building. Part of the portfolio that we have is a software platform called Asset Planner. And Asset Planner is a proprietary technology that we developed in-house that we go in and take a look at the buildings from top to bottom, from foundation to weather vane, and give you a critical assessment of each and every asset within the building. So the buildings, everything within the windows, the flooring, the ceilings, the roofing, HVAC system, electrical system is considered an asset. And we can assign a condition and a value to each one of those particular assets. That way it allows you to make a informed decision on what needs to be done within the building. So you can assess whether or not the building is valued properly. And also, once you take possession of the building, what needs to be done in the future, because you will have future needs on each of your building portfolio that are out there. As you're aware, buildings age, and items within the buildings age at different rates, and you need to be able to plan financially for those aging assets within the building portfolio. We offer a host of different reporting mechanisms to do that. Just to give you an idea, Asset Planner, we've got about 108,000 buildings, actually a little north of that now in our Asset Planner portfolio. Covers about 3.2 billion square feet of property. We've got about 31,000 unique users that are signed up to use the Asset Planner software. We take a look at the life cycle assessments and facility condition assessments, and also help with facility renewal management. We do energy analytics out there so we can take and track your energy usage within the building to make sure that your utility usage is in line and affordable for you. We also offer CMMS, which is computerized maintenance management systems, so that you can immediately know when something needs to be maintained, filter changes and air handlers, what have you. Next slide, please. We've got quite a number of clients around the country, as you can imagine, with 108,000 buildings. Some of the recent ones are Hazelwood School District in St. Louis, Missouri. We've got about 34 buildings that we manage for them. We got KDE statewide, so we manage all their buildings. Boise, Coeur d'Alene, Poway, the list goes on and on. Next slide. So as part of the advisory services, we take a look at your portfolio. If you've got multiple buildings, we'll take a look at each one of them. And we forecast what the life cycle is for each one of the buildings and the individual assets within. We do condition assessment and validation as part of it. As I mentioned, we put a grade, to each one of the assets themselves. And then put a value to that also, so that you can forecast what your needs would be in the future. And that all relates to your future risk of owning or managing the building itself, and helps you set your funding appropriations for now and in the future. On the strategic planning side, and we'll get into this a bit later in the slide presentation, we also have a regimen of capital creation strategies where we help lower your cost of ownership overall. We take into account a variety of things, everything from your tax bills. We can challenge the assessors in the counties or cities based on the data that we come up with, because we do have a true valuation of what the property is worth when we're done. Same way with insurance, to keep your insurance bills in line. We also help with funding. Additionally, as we do our analysis, we're able to capitalize the energy savings and some of these others to reduce your overall cost of capital within the building itself. And then on the backside, we can also help you with your operations and management, energy optimization, and if so needed, the carbon footprint reporting, if that is something that interests you also. Next slide. I think I covered this one. Let's go to the next slide too. Uh-oh, we're missing some graphics in here. Can you hit the next? Maybe they'll pop in. Here we go. Okay, so as I mentioned early on, buildings age, the assets within the buildings age at different rates. So within the first 20 to 25 years, you're going to go through an entire host of replacement or repairs, everything from HVAC to roofing to water heaters. You'll have painted the building several times over that initial course of 25 years, and probably replace flooring in there too. That represents, give or take, 35 to 40% of your building value. As a building continues to age, if you hit the next arrow, as a building continues to age, further systems begin to deteriorate. You have issues with plumbing. The cast iron takes and rots through. You end up having to replace some of the soil lines in there. You have building envelope issues, water leaking in. And that represents, give or take, about 60 to 65% of the replacement value of the property itself. Next slide. So the issue that you have is deferred maintenance. Deferred maintenance is a practice of postponing maintenance activities, and it comes with a cost. Every dollar of deferred maintenance becomes about $4 of replacement maintenance over time. So if you continue to defer maintenance within the building, it costs you essentially more dollars in the future by not maintaining the building at a proper level over time, and it does become a risk to your organization. Next. So, what are the challenges in owning a building? You've got aging infrastructure within that you're having to deal with, and it's always comes with a capital cost. You have to be able to prioritize the projects that you want to do within the building, whether it's renovations, moving classroom walls, or replacing the infrastructure itself, HVAC, electrical systems, the things that age. Also, you have an issue with employees within the building, primarily your maintenance folks, that have institutional knowledge that doesn't get transferred when they move on to a new position. Part of the software, the benefits of the software is it embeds that institutional knowledge within, so that you know what pieces of equipment have been worked on, what's been renovated recently. And this also gives you a data defensible approach to your budgeting. So within the software, we've got this reporting capability that prioritizes needs versus wants within the building. You may have the need to replace electrical panels because they're outdated. You can't get parts for them anymore. And this gives you that defensible position, so that when you go for funding appropriations to replace a given item, it supersedes the people or the wants that are out there that do exist. And let's move on to the next slide if we can. So how do you bridge the divide? How much deferral and how much risk do you have as part of owning the building itself? And it's a matter of managing that risk itself. And at what point does it affect the quality of teaching and learning within the facility itself? If we can move to the next slide. So as I mentioned previously, we've got Asset Planner, which is our software-based analytical tool. We do all of the capital and lifecycle planning and decision-making within the software itself after we've assessed the buildings themselves. We also provide some project planning tools within the software. We also offer the maintenance management suite, the CMMS, as I mentioned previously, that also has a bolt-on module of service requests for day-to-day management and ad hoc maintenance within the facility itself. As I mentioned, we've got energy management suite that can track your energy usage within and provide a variety of different metrics for reporting. Next slide. I'm going to take a drink here. Within the software, as I mentioned previously, we take a look at everything top to bottom within the building. We also look at the property and the site, roadways, driveways, your sidewalks, fencing, and site utilities as part of it. So you get a holistic view of the property that you own and are maintaining over a period of time. Next slide. Next slide. So the software itself is a web-based platform. As you can see, we've got a particular school district here that we've got stick pins in, and the stick pins are colored from using essentially a stoplight analogy that green is good, yellow is caution, and red is critical. Next slide. So within that map, you can click on any given building or your entire portfolio and take a look at the needs for the overall portfolio or individual building. And you can see that very first slide, we've got quite a backlog. If you can hit the over button, it'll pop up some additional graphics. You can see that we've got deferred, whoops, let's go back, here we go. We got deferred backlog. This happens to be a larger school district in St. Louis that we recently did. They had a deferred backlog of about $80 million in total needs. And these are broken up by individual asset categories here. So you can see that, we've got HVAC, interior, electrical, the building shell, so on and so forth. And it projects it out over a period of time. Now, the deferred maintenance is not uncommon at all. Every building owner has deferred maintenance that they deal with. So, and nobody ever has funding to handle all of it all at once. So traditionally, we've got a funding mechanism where we handle the O&M, and that gets laid in over a period of time that will eventually track in the coming slides here and show the graphing of how you can handle that deferred maintenance backlog. Next slide, please. So here we've clicked into an individual building, and just to give you an idea what the software capabilities are, it can break it down into the urgent and high priority needs, what needs to be addressed just immediately. And as you can see here, these are high and urgent, and typically it ends up being building envelope, roofing, HVAC, and electrical is the biggest factor of urgent and high backlog issues. Next slide. We deal with what's called FCI, Facility Condition Index. The BOMA and other major entities use what's called Facility Condition Index to gauge the condition of a property itself. It's okay to carry a backlog of deferred maintenance up to about 10%. Some building owners go up to about 15% of deferred maintenance. So if you've got a building that's say worth $1 million and you carry about 100,000 in deferred maintenance, that's okay, as long as it doesn't affect the operating condition of the building itself. I just wanted to bring this up because this will play into the next slide. Next slide, please. So if you take a look at the top graph, that's the total deferred maintenance over a period of time. And then the blue graph, the blue line on the graph lays in the funding mechanism, and we're able to determine from that point what the additional funding requirement would be over the course of time to bring your facility condition index down to that 10% or fair range. Next slide, please. And this is getting into the capital creation strategies. As part of the Ameresco services, we do take a look at 4 different buckets here. So we also take a look at O&M optimization. You may have some equipment that is older, but in pretty fair condition. And if you maintain it, throw a few dollars at some service, you can extend the life of that equipment as opposed to replacing it, which could conceivably be, 2 or 3 times the cost of just traditional maintenance on the equipment itself. We also take a look at O&M services, and moving to the next bucket, we've got energy solutions that we look at. Energy solutions that we look at. So it's everything from energy efficiency upgrades, simple things from LED lighting to high efficiency HVAC equipment to water savings measures, low flow fixtures, things like that. We also can help with energy procurement on the natural gas side. And if you've got a big group of buildings, we can take a look at everything from distributed energy to solar to a variety of other measures. We also help with bundling. If you've got numerous buildings, we can take and put those services out on the market for bidding. You get the benefit of the and I just lost my thought. I apologize. The benefit of group buying to reduce your overall cost. And on the real estate side, as I mentioned, we take advantage of property tax assessments and property insurance validation, and then energy tax rebates. And I think we can go right past that one.
And we're getting up to time. Yep. But again, I want to thank IDOE and Bondry for allowing us to present. As you can see from both Adam and Scott and Mark's comments, that there are a lot of considerations. The most important thing you can do up front is build the right team that represents you, that you can trust in, and it truly has your back throughout this process and is working in good faith for you. You have all of our emails listed in our biographies earlier, or if you can't find them, contact Oscar. He can definitely get you in touch with us. We are happy to play any role we can, even if it's initial conversations and due diligence, just to answer any questions. But please reach out. Like I said, the most important thing you can do is truly build the right team up front. So with that, Oscar, I'll turn it back to you for any closing comments you may have.
Yeah, no, thank you, David. I guess I would post to anybody that is logged on, anybody from IDOE or the participants, if they have any questions. We have some time now for questions. In addition to that, we are looking for 3 schools, one in Northern Indiana, one in Central Indiana, and one in Southern Indiana, to do a live evaluation. As we are evaluating COVID, the initial goal was to have a live session where we invited multiple schools to come to one facility and have this group do a walkthrough and allow the people attending to see what it looks like to walk through a building and see the glaring things to look for. So we are still looking for potential schools. So if you have a school that you would like to have evaluated or know of a leader that could use the service, please reach out to me or Bea or Shanice, and we will try and get that scheduled. There is a chance that we may have to record the video of us walking through and then distribute it because of COVID restrictions. But with that, our next webinar will be in early October. We will be sending invitations out to everybody for that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bea or Shanice for any closing remarks, and then we can end the recording.
Hello, this is Bea. Just a final thank you for everyone that joined us today, from the participants to the audience members to Bondry. This is always something that's very beneficial for us as well at IDOE to get some knowledge and some context from the experts. So thank you again, and looking forward to seeing you the next time.
All righty. If there are no questions, we can end the recording, and thank you all. You guys have a great weekend and a great holiday.